Okay, so boom. So today I want to talk about how badly the world needs Jesus. We live in a world where people spread negativity and hatred and don't even realize how they're doing it. It can be as simple as you giving advice, trying to help somebody out with a relationship or whatever the case may be. But if that advice that you're giving contains wisdom in ways of this world and not wisdom in ways of God, then you're possibly leading them toward and off farther from God instead of leading them toward Him. You have to realize God is the truth, the way, and the life. But this world and its worldly ways only lead to death and destruction. So when you're given advice that rely in the ways of the world and you're telling somebody to potentially get a get back on somebody, get revenge on somebody, to do something to make them feel better about what somebody did to them. Things of that nature that spread negativity and hatred. But when you walk in love and you give advice that God would want you to give, then that's leading towards love, forgiveness, and righteousness. People also take somebody telling them that they need Jesus as an insult. Like, why would we all need him? People have so much pride nowadays. They don't like to rely on Jesus. They don't like to rely on God. They don't like the idea of relinquishing their control over what they have over themselves and putting it in God's hands, even though He has a better way and plan for them. If they're allowing that pride to guide them through life, then it's only leading them toward destruction. Acts of pride lead to relationships being lost, miscommunication, negativity being spreaded throughout relationships, and people turning against each other and, you know, burning bridges unnecessarily because of them not setting their pride to the side and learning to step in love. And there's so many other ways and actions and emotions that lead to negativity being spread, hate being spread, and not love. But there's only one way to truth, life, and happiness and peace, and that's through God. So, with that being said, I'm not putting this message out there to talk about all the bad things that can lead to hatred and negativity being spread. Of course, I want to make that aware, but the goal is to tell y'all that can all be avoided if y'all would just give y'all hearts to God. If we listen to the words that Jesus gave us, if we live by God's word, if we lived with his word embedded in our hearts and we opened our hearts to him, then we would be so much better off as a society. We're meant to be unified and glorified under one name, being God the Father and Jesus the Son, but instead we're divided into nations. And within those nations, it's so much negativity and hatred swirling around. Instead of listening to God's word and listening to what Jesus taught, we listen to the leaders of humanity, and most of them are leading many toward death and destruction and negativity. Once again, there's only one way to truth, life, love, and peace, and that's through God. Everybody just needs to give their hearts that are broken, weakened, weary, cold, shut off, numb. Give them to God. Give them to Jesus and allow Him to make them anew. Allow Him to make them what they're meant to be used for. Allow your hearts to be used for the light that God intended. The reason why our hearts are undergoing so much emotional trauma and things of that nature is because we are led by our own understanding. But once again, if you rely on God, who is the truth, the way, and the life, then that wouldn't happen. If we relied on God, who is the truth, the way, and the life, then there wouldn't be a mass outbreak of negative emotions and hatred being spread. Simply put, it's time to stop listening to the idols and the leaders of this world. Separate yourself from the world and come to God.